Men don't realize how easily their minds slip into a passive state, a mental drift shaped by overstimulation, low discipline, and emotional reactivity. This creates a kind of feminine polarity, inside the mind, not in gender, but in psychology, receptive, unfocused, absorbed by external influence. Retention disrupts that downward pull. When you stop leaking energy, the brain stops operating from softness and starts operating from structure. Your thoughts become sharper, your decisions become cleaner, and your emotional swings begin to settle. Retention activates the neural circuits responsible for drive, discipline, and grounded presence. You stop reacting and start directing. The brain shifts from absorbing the world to shaping it. This is the first sign of masculine polarity being restored, the mind standing firm instead of bending to every impulse. This rewire doesn't happen through pressure, it happens through energy. When your life force stays inside you, the frontal regions of the brain responsible for focus and strategic thinking begin strengthening. Old habits of distraction lose their grip. Emotional spirals slow down. You begin thinking in straight lines instead of scattered loops. Retention gives your brain the signal that survival mode is over and building mode has begun. Section 1. Top-level control. Executive functioning is the command center of your mind. It's the part responsible for discipline, planning, long-term vision, and the ability to say no when your impulses scream yes. When a man is constantly draining his energy, this command center weakens. The emotional brain begins taking over, pushing him toward instant reward and away from strategic action. Retention reverses that erosion. When you stop overstimulating your reward circuits, your prefrontal cortex finally gets room to breathe. It becomes stronger, clearer, and more dominant. You feel it in the way you think. Decisions stop feeling chaotic. Focus stops slipping. The leader inside your mind starts waking up. This shift happens because retention reduces the dopamine spikes that keep your brain stuck in short-term gratification. Without those constant highs, your neural pathways reorganize. The emotional impulses that once dictated your actions lose their authority. The prefrontal cortex begins overriding them, like a general stepping back into command after a long absence. You start noticing that temptations feel weaker, planning feels easier, and sticking to goals feels natural. This is masculine polarity taking form inside the brain. Logic regaining control over impulse, direction overtaking distraction, intention becoming stronger than craving. As executive functioning strengthens, your entire identity begins shifting. You no longer act based on moods, urges, or convenience. You act based on direction. You think in terms of months and years instead of minutes and hours. Even your tone changes, calmer, slower, more deliberate. Retention gives the brain the stability it needs to operate from structure instead of chaos. This is what creates top-level control. You stop living as a passenger in your own mind and begin leading from the front. Masculine clarity isn't a personality trait, it's a neurological state. One that retention restores by giving your executive circuits the energy they were always meant to run on. Section 2. Cognitive capacity. Lust doesn't only drain the body, it drains the mind. Every intrusive fantasy, every compulsive thought loop, every moment spent feeding desire steals space from your working memory. This is the mental storage you use for planning, learning, solving problems, and building your future. When it's crowded with sexual rumination, there is no room left for purpose. Retention clears that internal clutter. The moment you stop feeding those loops, the noise begins fading. Your attention becomes lighter, your mind stops dragging itself through distraction, and your thoughts gain structure. This freed cognitive capacity becomes the fuel for ambition. You feel it as a sudden ability to focus longer, think deeper, and hold your goals in mind without losing momentum. When the brain is no longer hijacked by sexual imagery and craving, its resources become available for higher functions. The same energy once used to chase stimulation is redirected toward discipline and productivity. Your cognitive bandwidth expands. Tasks that once felt overwhelming now feel simple, because your mind is not fighting itself. This is the shift from chaos to clarity. Retention reduces internal noise so dramatically that your strategic thinking comes online in a way you may have never experienced. Your ideas connect faster, your planning becomes sharper. Even your conversations improve because your brain is no longer fractured. Over time, this stable cognitive environment becomes the hallmark of a masculine mind. The brain begins operating with intention rather than impulse. You can hold long-term visions without being disrupted by short-term urges. Your capacity to analyze, to create, and to stay consistent rises because your mental energy is finally working for you, not against you. Retention gives your brain the calm it needs to execute at a high level. It's not just about mental clarity, it's about reclaiming the cognitive power that was being siphoned away. This is how retention shapes a masculine mind, by freeing the mental space required for mastery, purpose, and forward movement. Section 3: Neuroplasticity Surge. When you stop feeding addictive reward cycles, the brain enters a rare window of heightened adaptability. Most men never reach this state because their minds are constantly reset by dopamine spikes that reinforce the same compulsive patterns. Retention breaks that loop. Without constant stimulation, the brain becomes more sensitive to new input and more willing to reorganize itself. This means habits that once felt impossible suddenly feel within reach. Identity shifts that used to take months now begin forming in days. The mind becomes pliable, teachable, and responsive. Retention doesn't force discipline. It creates a neurological environment where discipline grows naturally because the circuits that support clarity and direction can finally rebuild. As neuroadaptive potential rises, the pathways linked to focus, drive, and long-term ambition strengthen faster than before. The brain begins prioritizing delayed rewards over instant gratification. You start noticing small changes first: stronger concentration, longer periods of calm, a rising desire to improve. But as retention continues, these changes compound. You become more responsive to positive habits, more resistant to distraction, and more capable of holding a vision without collapsing into impulses. This is neuroplasticity at work. The same energy that once fed addiction now fuels growth. Your brain stops defaulting to chaos and begins defaulting to strength. Over time, masculine traits become easier to encode because the mind is no longer stuck in survival loops. Purpose begins feeling natural instead of forced. Assertiveness grows because your nervous system isn't drained. Direction becomes instinct because your energy isn't scattered. Retention sets the stage for this transformation by keeping your power inside your system long enough for your identity to evolve around it. The brain rewires to match the strength of your internal state. What was once a struggle becomes a standard. This is the surge that separates a drifting man from a directed one. The rise of a mind that finally has the energy and clarity to become who it was meant to be.